morning all, and welcome to the final session of our Copilot webinar series. This week we'll be looking at AI transformation with agents. So I'm just going to do a quick recap on what we covered off in the last couple of sessions, if people were here. So session 1, we looked at Copilot and Copilot Chat versus the paid Microsoft 365 Copilot license and the difference in capabilities there. And session 2 then focused on our own AI journey within Viatel. So Microsoft's Brian O'Shea interviewed our own Director of AI and Strategy, Eilish O'Connor. That was very interesting, just talking about how we scaled out internally and how we're, I suppose, working on the AI transformation with agents piece at the moment. So just to reiterate again, some things that we covered off, I suppose the foundations are the most important in getting them in place to make sure that you can roll out Copilot in a safe and governed way. So once you have your data, your security, and you have good usage in place across the org, your agents then are the next kind of natural step, and they're embedded into your work processes. So agents move your organizations from simple answers using Copilot into actions and outcomes. So again, just to reiterate, I suppose our ethos, which is get your foundations in place, then accelerate out throughout your organization, and lastly, then transform with those agents. So just to, I suppose, get a baseline here as to what an agent is, it's a type of AI that's built to carry out a particular task. So it doesn't just respond, it actually acts. So what it is understands the request, it makes a decision in whichever way it's been programmed to do so, it then takes action and it delivers an outcome. So the key shift there is we're moving from getting information using Copilot as your digital assistant to actually getting Copilot to carry out tasks on your behalf. So that's what separates Copilot from your agents. One informs and the other performs. There are a couple of existing agents already in place, which you probably are familiar with if you're using Copilot already. So analyst, researcher, and facilitator are already available to users on the paid license. Analyst is all about working with data, helping you to understand trends, summarize information, and turn data into insights. Researcher is more focused on pulling information. So that can be from documents, emails, various different sources, and turning it into something structured that you can then use. And facilitator isn't technically an agent, it's considered a tool by Microsoft, but it acts very similarly to an agent. It sits in your Microsoft Teams meetings and it just helps teams work better together. So that keeps meetings organized and keeps the meeting moving forward. You can add your agenda to facilitator and it will keep you on track. And it can also pull out action lists, to-do lists, and assign users to them as well. So the concept of an agent is already there. And what's changing now is the ability to build your own. And that brings us in then to your custom built agents. There are 3 types of custom built agents. The first is a knowledge retrieval. These are, I suppose, the simplest agents to build, and they're also the simplest in terms of what they can carry out. They essentially answer questions and summarize information. So they're pointing at an internal knowledge source within your organization and just answering questions based off of that knowledge source. They're user initiated, so a user has to interact with them in order to trigger a response. And they're read only. They're not carrying out any task. They're just looking at information and surfacing it for a user. They're very low risk and they're a good first step. Most organizations who have been using Copilot already probably have some knowledge retrieval agents already built. So some examples, there would be a policy agent or an FAQ agent. Again, you're just pointing it at your own internal knowledge sources and it's able to surface a very quick answer for you. This is where most organizations begin. The next step then is your task-orientated agents. So these ones actually execute processes. So again, they're programmed to perform a specific task, but again, they're triggered by a user. So they're not acting on their own. They're triggered by an input from a user. And from there, then they carry out a series of steps to provide an outcome. They're medium risk because they are acting independently in some ways, but there's high business value there if you can automate some of your existing processes. Examples there would be creating tickets, updating records, or automating processes, as I have said. So they're still triggered by a user, but they start to drive real business value then. And lastly, then, I suppose we have the most complex of agents, which is your autonomous agents. So they act independently based on events. They're not triggered by a user action, but they are triggered by something that can be an incoming mail, an addition to a SharePoint list, and so on. And they're able to handle long-running multi-step processes. The highest governance is required there because they are acting autonomously. So you need to ensure that the steps that they're carrying out are still within the bounds of your organization and with your existing governance. The examples there would be onboarding new members of staff, triaging tickets, or keeping track of inventory and ordering new stock when needs be. The autonomous ones would be the highest level of complexity. So there's a couple of ways of building the agents. Agent Builder on the left-hand side then sits within your Microsoft 365 Copilot. So if you have the paid Copilot license, you have access to Agent Builder, and you might have seen it already within your Copilot app. It's really easy to build an agent there, and you can just use like natural language. You don't have to code it or anything like that. You can just give it basic instructions and it will build an agent for you. And it's the best for those knowledge-based agents. So the agents that are just looking at a knowledge source and are very quickly surfacing an answer for you. The other option then is Copilot Studio. So this requires a separate license, and this is, I suppose, slightly more complex and allows you to build more complex agents. This connects to other systems and workflows. So you can connect it into a SharePoint list, for example, a ticketing system, and so on and so forth. It uses Power Platform as well, so you can have a series of triggers and a series of steps built in, and it enables those task-based and autonomous agents to work. So Copilot Studio is where things become more powerful. Most organizations start with the Agent Builder, but the real value comes then when you start creating your agents in Copilot Studio. Now, on the right-hand side, I've just got a little diagram there. So for your knowledge retrieval agents, they can be built in both Agent Builder or Copilot Studio. But yeah, for your task-oriented autonomous, you would need to use Copilot Studio just to get full value of all of the capabilities that are available. But I'm going to look at both of them anyway. So we're going to just jump into a quick demo video. All right, so the first agent I'm going to show you is just a knowledge agent, and I'm going to show you how you actually build it. So I'm just within Copilot here at the moment, and you'll see on the left-hand side, I have an option there for a new agent. Now I can type in the agent I want to create, or I can use the skip to configure option, either or. I'm just typing in some basic instructions here, and you can see that it is starting to build that. So this is just an internal company policy agent answering questions about HR policies, expenses, and IT onboarding. I wanted to give clear, concise answers. Only use the provided documents, and I've just specified there as well, if you're unsure, say you cannot find the answer, I don't want it to start hallucinating. That has built this out then on the right-hand side under configure. So I can do this myself, or I can use Copilot to build it for me, as I have done. And that's just given it some very specific instructions based off of the prompt that I inputted. And it's also included some example questions. From there, then I add my knowledge source. So I'm just going into my files, into my policy documents, and I'm going to add all 3 of these documents here. That's uploaded them there. And if I scroll down, then you have these suggested prompts. And again, Copilot has created them for me. I'll look at them in a second. If I go to the Try It tab on top, then I can test this agent before I actually make it live. So what is the annual leave policy? It should be a very easy question for it to answer. It's just looking at that specific file and surfacing an answer. And there we are. It's given me the correct answer there. And it's also referenced the sources that it used. Excuse me. So in the top right-hand corner then, I click create. So I can do further testing. For the sake of today, I just did one. And I'm ready to create my agent. Once it's created, then it will sit on that panel on the left-hand side, along with the pre-existing agents, so your researcher, your analyst, and so on. And from there, then I can just interact with it within a chat. So I'm going to ask it a further question here. Can I work remotely full-time? And again, it's able to pull those answers in. So A knowledge retrieval agent in this way is scoped and controlled. So it's grounded on specific sources and its instructions and behavior are defined. So if you were just using a chat, you might be able to get a sort of a similar answer to that based off of internal policy documents. But because I've given my agent specific instructions, I've designed it and I've decided what information it uses, how it responds, where it can be trusted. So instead of a general assistant, it's now a specific business capability. And it's held within the bounds of those files that I've told it to only base its answers on. So you can see then it's able to pull out those answers very quickly. I can easily jump back into a new chat and just interact with Copilot as normal, or I can dig into the internal policy agent. Within the chat as well, then I can ask further questions. I can ask it to specify things and so on and so forth, as you can see here. And you'll see that it's again giving me those prompt answers on the bottom. Underneath the chat inbox message input there, you'll see that it has those prompts suggested. They are the prompts that Copilot created for me, so you can adjust them as well. And just to test it here, because I want to ensure that it's not going to pull in an incorrect answer, I've asked it, how do I reset my password? This is something that this agent hasn't been programmed to answer. So I want to ensure it's not just going to hallucinate an answer or try to assist me, because I've given it specific instructions. If you don't know the answer, say as much. And so I'm just testing that there and it is working. So that's your knowledge retrieval agent. And as you can see, it's really easy to build it there within Copilot, as long as you have the paid license, just under new agent. Once it's built, then I can go back in, I can reconfigure it. If I click edit, I can add other knowledge sources. If there's a new knowledge source there, I can add other prompts and so on and so forth. And I can also share this agent out then with my colleagues. So if I click on the ellipsis, I can hit the share button there. And I can choose who to make it available to. I'm just going to give one of my other test users access. So my test user Sean here. Now, because I didn't actually give Sean access to those files previously, it's going to just give me a prompt about that. So I'm now giving Sean access to these internal policy assistants. Now, usually I suppose you would be using files that will be stored on a team or a SharePoint site that multiple users have access to. This is just a demo once they were on my OneDrive. But from there, then I can share it out. I'm given the link and I can share that out to other users in my org. So that's your knowledge retrieval. The next agent then is your task orientated. So this is where agents become operational. They're not just answering, they're actually acting as well. So this is an IT support agent I created. It's been instructed to troubleshoot IT issues with users. But in the event that it cannot assist them, once they've carried out the troubleshooting steps, it will log a ticket with the IT team. So you can see that that's just carried that out there. So again, it's been instructed to troubleshoot where possible, but when it cannot resolve the issue, it actually logs a ticket with the team. So it triggers a addition to a SharePoint list, which then logs a ticket on our ticketing system. So these are task orientated. It's carrying out various steps, and then it's able to trigger another action. So again, you can see I'm just testing it with a couple of different prompts there. And it's giving me various troubleshooting steps, which I can try. If I can't resolve it, you'll see there that it's logging a ticket for me. So they still need to be user initiated, but they can then act independently and update records, log tickets, and so on and so forth. Just to note as well that this was programmed to troubleshoot where possible, but I didn't have to necessarily give it specific troubleshooting steps. It was also able to just pull in general knowledge as to how to troubleshoot an issue. So for this example here, my laptop is slow and keeps freezing. I didn't program it with, how to respond to such a request, but it's able to just use general knowledge to be able to advise. So there's some various troubleshooting steps it's given me there, but again, I can quiz it further. So it's asked me to check my storage. I don't know how to do that. I can ask it further and it's able to give me those instructions. Again, without being specifically programmed to do so. And again, if I just prompt it further, it should change to the next step then and log a ticket with IT for me. So that's your task orientated. You can see then that they're slightly more complex, and this one I have built in Copilot Studio as opposed to in Agent Builder, which we just saw within the Copilot app then. The final agent then is your autonomous agent. Yeah, so these take it a step further. They don't need a user prompt to trigger it. They just need some sort of event to trigger it. So this one that we're looking at here is a client service agent. So a prospective client sends an email requesting engagement. The agent isn't prompted by a user. It's triggered by this incoming email into this mailbox. From there, it can extract information from this email and then work through a series of steps. So it's extracting the client information. It's determining whether we've engaged with them previously, it's confirming the industry sector, and it's identifying a suitable staff member within our organization to engage with them. From there, then it can write and send an email to that staff member with the relevant details, pushing them to engage with this client. So everything that you're seeing there is happening automatically in the background. The agent is progressing the task and it's working towards that outcome. So it's not just responding there, but it's actually completing the work. That is reducing lead time significantly and also just the administrative workload. So that's one autonomous agent in work, but what you're seeing on screen now is, I suppose, where Microsoft sees the future of work going. So that will be multiple agents across an organization supporting different users, different teams, processes, and so on. So I will jump back in here. So this is where I suppose we move again beyond chat and into where agents actually become a part of your operation. And it's typically where organizations hit a challenge. Building one agent is fine, but it's deciding what process do you automate, how do you scale them, and then most importantly, how do you govern them then when they are out and live in your environment? And that's where Microsoft Agent 365 comes in. So this is the new control plane for agents. It's just been launched and it helps you move from agent experimentation into enterprise scale operations. And it's built on these three core capabilities. So observe, it gives you a full picture of all of the agents in your organization, even ones that have been built in Agent Builder by one end user, maybe only being used by one end user. It gives you a full view of all of those agents, as well as what their usage is and their behaviors. It allows you to govern those agents and establish guardrails for the agents and for your users as well. And most importantly, it allows you to secure them. So you protect their identities and access, you safeguard the data that they are accessing, and you defend them against threats and vulnerabilities as well. So that's Microsoft Agent 365. That has now been included in a new E7 license, which again, you might have heard of. It just became on general availability there just over a month ago. So that now includes your Microsoft 365 E5 license and your Entra suite with your Microsoft 365 Copilot license, and now a Microsoft Agent 365 license to control your agents. So these are all being bundled into a new E7 suite, a new frontier suite. So it brings everything together. That's your normal productivity, your AI, and your governance. And it allows organizations then to scale out AI across an organization. I just have a couple of interesting statistics here. This is based off a recent Microsoft Work Trend Index, and it was based on Copilot chat usage. They've just pulled out some of these stats here. So I suppose the first one there in the middle, 49% of all Copilot conversations support cognitive work, helping workers analyze information, solve problems, evaluate. So AI has already been used every day. You know, it's drafting documents, it's analyzing information, supporting decisions, and so on and so forth. It's already been leaned on heavily as a digital assistant. But I think what was interesting here are the two other stats on either side. 66% of users say that AI has allowed them to spend more time on high-value work. I think that's really interesting, and it's something I've even found myself as well. Being able to rely on a digital assistant to carry out some of those admin heavy workloads really does free you up to work on higher value and more worthwhile work. And on the right hand side there as well, 58% say they're producing work they couldn't have a year ago. I mean, it's just incredible really the shift that's taken place. So it's now no longer AI assisting people, the shift then is going to be to agents actually carrying out some of those work. So the future is probably going to be organizations being human-led, but agent-operated. So instead of employees carrying out the work, they're directing agents to do so and managing those agents as part of their work as well. I will include the link anyway to the study there in those slides. It's very interesting if users want to have a look at it. But this is where I suppose organizations hit a challenge. It's not in the tools themselves, but it's in deciding where to start. You know, what do you build? What use cases do you use? And how do you scale this out then across the organization? And that's where Viatel can help. So some of the areas where users struggle is, you know, where do we start? What use cases matter? And how do we govern this? I think what's really interesting there about the use cases matter, and it's something that Alish mentioned in last week's interview with Brian O'Shea as well. There were a couple of, even internally, we are still on our own agent journey. We have created agents and we are still continuing to transform business processes into agents. It's ongoing work, and I think it's something that will be ongoing for a long time, probably potentially forever. I don't think it's, you know, there's ever going to be an end date on creating agents in an org. But it was interesting that she mentioned about some of the use cases that were brought forward by the business to become potentially agents. When we kind of dug into it and, you know, looked at what that work process was actually doing, we determined that it was no longer relevant. So it's important as well to be aware that AI isn't the answer for everything, and you might find that some of these use cases that are brought forward, AI isn't really the correct answer. I found it in another organization of ours, a customer, where again, they brought a couple of use cases forward, something that was admin heavy, they were spending a lot of time on, and they wanted to know if AI could help them. It wasn't necessarily AI that was the solution there. It was actually more like a Microsoft form and triggering another action and using Power Automate and so on. So it's important, I suppose, to ensure that we're not using AI just for the sake of using AI, but we're using it for use cases that are viable and that really make sense for AI. So that's something that we here in Viatel can assist you with. We can carry out use case discovery. We can kind of drill into those work processes and see if they are viable agent use cases. And I think it's a good exercise for organizations to undertake anyway, just to drill into processes to determine if they are still worthwhile or still providing value for the business, or if they can be changed anyway, whether that's through building an agent and automating it, or whether that's just through adjusting the current process as well. But we can carry out agent design workshops. We can help you build, deploy, and govern those agents then as well. So we can help you move from experimentation into real measurable outcomes. And we do that with our discovery, design, build, and then scale. If you are at the stage where you're using Copilot across the org, it's working well for you, we would say the next step is identifying 2 to 3 potential high impact use cases, and we will help you define and deliver them. If you're not there yet, that's absolutely fine. If you are still experimenting with licensing users, we can also assist you there with rolling out your licenses, enabling your users, scaling out adoption across the org. And then when you're ready, then we can assist you with this next step, this agentic transformation. So we will meet you where you are on your journey and assist you in scaling out Copilot across the org. After this webinar, guys, you'll be sent an email as you have been previously with the recording and the slides as well, but there'll also be a link to an AI survey. We'd really appreciate if you could fill out the survey. If you do, there's actually a prize now, so you'll be in with a chance to win a €100 One for All gift voucher. It only takes about 5 minutes to carry out, so we'd really appreciate some insights there. That would be great. And secondly, we're also offering a special offer here on some of our Copilot packages. So as I said, all of our packages can be tailored to meet you where you are, whether you just want to do some enablement, whether you want to look at transforming some use cases into agents. We will build out a package for you, and you can avail of a 20% discount if you contact us within the month of June. So I think that is everything from my side, guys. That was a little quicker than expected. I don't see any questions in the chat there, but I will stay online here for the next 5 minutes anyway. And if you want to ask any questions, please pop them in the chat there. But thanks for attending our webinar series. I hope it was helpful. And yeah, please complete the survey as well if you get a chance. So thanks very much.